This is Center Stage, putting your firm in the spotlight by highlighting business owners and other industry experts to help take your firm to the next level. Hey everyone, and welcome to Center Stage. I'm your host, John Henson, and I need to make sure that I remember how to do all of this because even though in your world, we've been having episodes come out every week, but it has probably been a month or two since I have recorded an episode. I've been on paternity, been just, working ahead and then trying to not fall asleep because that's how newborns are. So
exciting chapter.
Yes, exactly. So hopefully this will be a smooth recording and I can get back into the groove of things. But this week we are talking, focusing really on a group that maybe hasn't gotten as much attention on this show, and that's younger lawyers, or maybe those who are going out on their own for the first time. And my guest this week has done a lot of work with this specific demographic. She's helped a lot of these lawyers achieve financial empowerment, help them get more family time, and just live just an overall happier life. And that is Kelly Sturmthal. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you. And as you are living life as well with your family that's growing, congratulations again, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I this is going to be one of those episodes where I can probably learn a few things as well, even though I am not a lawyer, but I can probably still get a lot of that. And so before we jump in, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and why this is such a passionate thing for you.
Oh, sure. I actually grew up in an entrepreneurial family. So I think that was a gift to me because there's lots of nuances that you learn within that. And I have a finance degree and also then my law degree. So I worked for 2 years in between. So, I feel like I have a pretty varied background on the business world as well as the legal world. And the practice of law is a business. And I don't know that we're always taught that in law school. I have had a couple of variations of different businesses combining consulting and practicing law. And I am an estate and business planning attorney. So I took the transactional route and incorporated my interest, which was business and certainly caring for families. I think a lot of lawyers do go to law school because they want to impact someone or some community or, and then you find out how much is involved in doing that. Plus, by the way, the 7 years of school. So, it really is a process. And I think we often have to be pulled back to one of my favorite phrases, back to basics, because when things get pretty complicated, you have to kind of pull back, and say, okay, so what's the most important, or what are we trying to accomplish here? So I kind of have a varied background, so I feel like I can speak to a bit, and really enjoy watching others grow within this very diverse technology age, really just grow their legal practice.
Awesome. So let's talk about, these younger lawyers. They go through all the schooling. They're ready to go out. They're ready to go get their first job. What are some of the unexpected challenges that some of these new lawyers face right out of school?
I think the first part is that they feel as though their plan is done. That 7 years is a long time. It's a lot of pushing yourself forward to get through the undergrad, the law school, the bar exam, your first job. That's a pretty big accomplishment. But I believe that then they forget to continue to plan often. And what I mean by that is, what is this life going to look like in practicing law? Because we don't necessarily get out of law school and we start a job and we know how to do it and we're just getting better and better at it. We're actually still trying to determine which job is best for us. We're trying to determine how to practice law as well as the business of law. And I think the business of law applies whether you're in a government job, if you're at a corporate job, if you're at a law firm, because even though it's law, that's our trade or that's our service, but it is a business. We have to determine how we're getting people to hire us, and we have to determine that our income and expenses are running and at the pace that they need to. And I don't know that all lawyers see the practice of law as a business. So it's a little twist on it because it always ends up being that. And sometimes that's where some of the frustration comes. So I think planning, continuing to plan is an encouragement for young lawyers, and also really getting an idea or finding someone to get some insight on the business of law, just so you understand it, regardless of the practice area that you end up in.
Yeah. So, and so that's interesting. And so, correct me if I'm mishearing you, but I mean, it almost sounds like, like you said, like regardless of where you end up, whether it's big law or even a small firm or a corporate or a government, you're saying that, you still need to understand the business of it rather than just what you're practicing. Like,
Right.
what is,
And
what does that mean though?
well, I mean, so a business has income, expenses, administration, and people. So, if you take the four basic categories of a business, so even if we take a government job, they have clients already based on the way that's structured, but they still
Mhm.
have to figure out the administrative. They have to figure out how much time it's going to take in order to get the job done. And then they have to interact with the HR side of it, the people. So
Mhm.
there's always an element of, and then they have to practice law. So the
Yeah.
practicing law is such a huge part of it. And in the beginning, it's a very, very steep learning curve, even if you've done really well in law school or you've had internships, or it still is a steep learning curve. So it's really just acknowledging or reminding young lawyers that that's part of it, so they don't get into their job and then realize, oh my gosh, there's so much more that I have to be thinking about here. So it's more of an awareness. On the corporate job, or especially the small mid-sized firm, all that's happening at once. You might not be part of it initially. You're really trying to practice law, but an awareness of the business side, meaning, well, how are we getting these clients, or time versus money? Every young lawyer has to deal with time because
Yeah.
of the structure of our fees are typically based on time, because all that stuff's in your head.
Right.
So it really is just to understand the basics of business, I think, is very helpful. And as you're doing that, you're also planning for the future. Most business owners are always thinking a little bit ahead of their current situation so that they can continue their business. So it's just two, important points about practicing law. That
Yeah.
most law schools, they're starting to talk about it a little bit, but I don't think they concentrate on it because the practice of law is fairly demanding.
Yeah. And that was going to be my next question, is just how much of this do they even like, what any context for this in law school? But then it's like, well, where do you even begin to fit it in? Because, it's already long enough already. And I imagine all of it is very important to learn along the way. And so it's like, there's this other important element of it, but where do you even fit in other than just having them get the real world experience once they get out?
Right. Well, and I think part of that is taking, so if you're working 40 or 50 hours, maybe more, in a law office, you're concentrating on learning how to practice law.
Yeah.
So then when you step away, just to think about the processes of your business or your office or where your paper flow is, that is a business element, whether you call it that or not. So I think that with respect to how do you process it, it's more of an awareness. If you take a lane and 80% of it is learning law, that other 20% is just an awareness of how it's all working, because that part is what's pushing you forward in your career, what you want the next part of it to look like. In the beginning, you're just probably taking a job to learn it, trying to find the right firm, the right environment. So if you just spend a little bit of time thinking about the processes and how this is working, I think it gives you some insight into your future, what would work for you once you begin to master a certain area of law.
Yeah. And so for many of these lawyers, part of that future is going out, starting their own firm, being their own boss, working for themselves. And
Yeah.
maybe they have, some of this context and understanding for how the business of law works, but a lot of times they're not responsible for it. But now, once you're going out, opening your own firm,
Oh,
you
right.
have all of these new responsibilities. You are the bookkeeper, the marketer, the receptionist, the admin, a lot of times, especially if you're a true solo. How do you balance all of these new accountabilities and responsibilities that come along with running your own firm on top of doing the legal work that you're getting paid to do.
Right. And sometimes those that think it's the best choice to go out on their own find it is two full-time jobs, running a business and practicing law. So I think a big part of that is knowing what you do well. And when I say that, I'm a big proponent of your natural skills, knowing your natural skills.
Yeah.
I'm certified in Myers-Briggs. I feel like I have a couple CLEs that I have about what type of lawyer are you? Are you the practicing lawyer, the managing lawyer, the rainmaking lawyer? So there are skills that each lawyer has. Very often lawyers lean very logical and task oriented. What I mean, they're very good at going through a checklist.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, the parts that they probably need to fill in may be the marketing side potentially. It could be you interact with a lot of law firms. You can see that that's your business, why people hire you. Additionally, I think the getting clients in the door is another facet that lawyers sometimes are not as seasoned at, because they are excellent at the quiet part.
Mm-hmm.
Or the work part. So much of that, I think law school attracts every type of personality. So therefore, I think it's just important to know yourself really well, because then if you can figure out, we really excel when we are in our natural skill lane. If I was asked all day long to do accounting, I might not be as excellent at that as I am in a firm requires accounting, as I might be at the practicing or the rainmaking or the managing. So I know what I do well, and I try to, if you're building a practice, you want to surround yourself with someone that fills in that gap, like a good marriage.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the other part is, I think you need people around you. Any good business owner always has someone that is ahead of them, guiding them. And I don't know if lawyers see that. We all don't get that because it's not structured that way. But most lawyers that are ahead of young lawyers are always willing to provide advice. So I think that it's again, I feel a big part of my passion is highlighting a few areas that lawyers don't get exposed to.
Yeah. And so, and going back to something you said a minute ago, we had a good episode a couple of weeks ago with Emily LaRouche talking about your genius zone. And that kind of talks about, speaks into, what you just said, where it's, kind of these 4 quadrants of like things you're good at and you like doing, things you're good at, but don't really care for, things that you're bad at, but you're doing, and then things that you hate and don't like doing.
Right. You're not good at all.
So, and so, the idea is focus on the things that you like doing and you're good at doing, and then surround yourself with the people and the resources that can help accomplish the rest of those things for you. And even as a true solo, there are still ways to get that done. Like, you still don't have to do it all on your own. And I think that that's a big hurdle that a lot of these new lawyers have to overcome.
Exactly. Absolutely. And those are, the resources out there to determine the quadrants or the natural skills are voluminous. You really have, it's just taking the time to determine it, because if a lawyer went through law school, we actually have learned how to figure things out. That's part of 3 years of law school, is being trained to figure out a problem, solve a problem. So part of it is not that you have to solve every problem. Part of it is that in solving the problem, maybe it's collaborating with someone or planning to have the income to hire someone in the future. So, and all that comes back to business and planning. It is and it's just not thought of sometimes in the legal environment that they're connected. So, whichever words we use, but I just so appreciate that others are saying that, because it really is critical. And think everyone that's listening, when you think about when you're doing something you either love or you're really good at, kind of is, for lack of a better word, easy. You're doing it very efficiently. you're, cranking through it, you're happy at the end of the day because it's what you naturally do. So that is possible to find that lane within law. I just think you have to seek it.
Yeah. So, yeah, and the other element of this is, we've been talking, strictly about everything that is involved in running the business, but then you also have your personal life and your family life going on the other side of that. And so, what have you seen in that regard? Because I know this is a thing you focus on, so clearly it's an issue.
Mm.
What have you seen, happen, or the issues that, lawyers deal with when it comes to trying to balance work and family life?
I think that is an area that I have seen many seasoned lawyers. They are at it. Some actually stop practicing, even though they finally hit the point and poured all this time, energy, and money into a career, because they cannot leave that business that they created or practice that they created to then add an element of spouse and family and all that goes with that. So my opinion is that you have to make a decision earlier what you want your life to look like in 5 or 10 years, because it's back to that fact that you do have to plan still, because many of us are okay, as soon as I finish this, then I'll get to that. And
Mhm.
it's very difficult when your career is pretty demanding. So if you have all these parts pulling at you, the business of law and the practice of law, then you can't find the break to add a spouse and add children. And yet,
Yeah.
as you know now, it's just such
Yeah.
a wonderful part of life, and it does balance this. So my wish is that young lawyers do not give up all that they've worked so hard, and they've become actually good at practicing law at one
Yeah.
point, that they don't have to give that up. And part of that is at that between that 3 and 7 year mark, maybe,
Mhm.
that they are starting to reposition themselves, whether it's at their firm or in a new position, or maybe it's starting a business, so that they can add the element of family.
Yeah.
Because, I've been married over 28 years. I have 2 young men that are, adulting and as children. And I would say that there were ebbs and flows within my career in order to manage that. And I'm so grateful I have that part of my life. It makes me better,
Yeah.
having a husband and 2 children that are growing and entering the world in a way that I'm proud of.
Yeah.
So I just think so much of this is an awareness, and we're so busy learning how to practice law that that is something that I really hope to bring to your audience, that just take a minute, maybe talk to others, maybe find someone that's done it, that you actually respect, that has done it well. Look for those older, or the attorneys that are ahead of you, to
Yeah.
give you a little wisdom, and try not to get to the point that you're so tired, because practicing law is tiring. Because if you really think about it, every single person that comes to us has a problem to solve. So after 30 years, I graduated, a little bit around that time ago. After 30 years of solving other people's problems, if you don't find your quadrant that fits,
Yeah.
it's tiring and you leave.
Yeah.
And that's a shame, because I think we miss out on some really excellent attorneys,
Mhm.
because they just say, I just can't do it anymore. So let's not
Yeah.
get there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I see this happen with some of our clients too. It's just like, they
Mhm.
come to us and they're terminating their agreement with us. And, we try to figure out why. There's always different reasons, but there are always every year a handful of them that just say, I just can't do this anymore. I'm getting out, I'm switching careers. And, it is really unfortunate. And so,
Yeah.
the other aspect of your focus is making sure that people find the happiness that they need
Right.
and deserve. And you've talked a lot today about the importance of planning and having those mentors. Is that, in your opinion, what the happiest attorneys do well, or are there other elements included in that you've seen that lead to a lot of that really genuine happiness for people in their career?
I think lawyers that find the practice area they love and they're impacting people or a community or a group, they're often very content because they see their impact. But they probably have quite a few people around them that are allowing them to do the part of that accomplishes the goal. I see lawyers that, because there's a combination of lawyers that, if you look at a public defender versus a corporate lawyer, I mean, there are two different groups and two different lives that come with that. One's trying to completely impact a community or a certain group of people, and the other one is in a more affluent area because the clients have more money to pay and get things done. So, again, both are valuable and important. It just depends which one that your passion is in. So the ones that are the happiest are either accomplishing the goal, regardless of the practice area, of their original intent of going to law school, and they're able to find the role within the practice of law that is just that is comfortable, and they can keep learning in that, but they're not overwhelmed by all the other jobs. So same business principle, who's bringing the income in, who's paying the expenses, who's handling the people, and who is handling the administration.
Yeah. And so, one of the last things I want to ask you about, you've talked a lot about planning, and mapping these sorts of things out. What does that look like, kind of broadly speaking? How far out do you plan? What are some of the things that you plan for? Do you account for maybe some unexpected obstacles or opportunities along the way? I mean, for example, we talk about, like I'll use myself for an example, like maybe I had planned out 10 years in advance, but maybe I didn't think about the fact that I was going to have a kid, and obviously that makes a lot of big changes there, and it adjusts your priorities and everything. So how, what sorts of things do you help, advise people with in that regard when they are making their big plan for their career?
2 points are that you are living below your income. And I say that mostly because very often we're finally, after 7 years of school, if you went straight through, you are overjoyed to have an income. So, but I think that the biggest error people make is they buy, a new car, they get a big house, and they become beholden, what they call that golden handcuffs. Some of you may have heard that term. They become beholden to the job and the income of the job. So watching that is part of it. And then the part of the 5-year, when I consult with young lawyers or, business people, even one of the numbers that people don't always think about, they think of their annual salary, but they don't always think about their monthly income. So if you need $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 a month, whatever that number is, I love to be able to say, if you're in the position of beyond a paycheck where you're making some decision, you have to push a little more to make a little bit more. That number is an interesting way to look at things, because if you actually say your number is 10,000, I'll just pick a general number, and you work, whatever your work is, you work hard enough to get to 10,000. It's only the 20th of the month. You actually could pause, spend time with family, plan a trip, and push your next project, clients, work product, whatever you need, to the next month, because you actually know your monthly number. And so lawyers don't always think like that, because they're basically saying, no, I'm waiting for clients to come to me, but we're all marketing. I'm waiting for the paycheck. Well, if the paycheck is 10,000, well, maybe when you get to, the point where you've made 8,000 of it, that other 2,000 you're pushing into your family fund, or I think it's a 30-day project instead of an annual project. And that's a really different way, an efficient way to look at it, because then you're blocking out time for your family, for your spouse. I mean, stay married, have kids. It's a wonderful part of life. It actually makes us better. And I believe that a lot of it is, so one of my, when you're in law school, they sometimes say, if maybe one of your classes will say, look at a situation and look at it from every angle, because everyone has an opinion, or you have one side saying this is the argument, and then the other side arguing, moot court or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And I like to look at business that way, to where if things are frustrating, step back and look at it from a completely different angle. Sometimes you have to read a book, talk to a marketing person. Sometimes you have to talk to a mentor, or just pause and rest for a minute. But very often your answer is in looking at it from a completely different perspective.
Yeah.
So I encourage those that are frustrated to just step back and look at the basics of their career, and look at it from a different angle if they're frustrated.
Yeah. And I mean, so many different, ways of going back. I mean, I love the 30-day analogy that you put there, because, even as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, oh, I do something like this. So I felt very special and
I encouraged
accomplished.
you.
Yes. And so, it was really good, because it does help, because, and the way that I approach it is, I reach that number, and then I look, you talk about, you get there on the 20th, and I look at that and be like, okay, what do I have the capacity to do right now?
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to, do I have the opportunity, or do I need to step away from this and go spend some time with my family, or take some time for myself, or whatever? Or do I have some capacity to maybe help my future self out a little bit, and maybe get ahead? And then in future months, if I am feeling a little bit more stressed or burned out, or, pulled in a bunch of different directions, I have a little bit more flexibility there to step away a little bit earlier, because I've worked ahead a little bit. And so, however you look at it, doing, approaching something that way really can be valuable for people. So
you have 12 opportunities, to do that in your 12 months, as opposed to thinking it's October. We all have that euphoric feeling in January 1st, we're going to make things happen. So it really is a concept of actually creating that more often.
Yeah, love it. So how can people learn more about what you do and the ways that you help and get in touch?
Oh, sure. So I have an Instagram, Kelly ESQU. My last name is quite, it's a German name, great husband, great sons, but it's long. So that's my Instagram. I have my law office website. I think if you look up my last name, all my stuff comes up, because nobody has that name. We have years ago, I with a partner of mine that ended up moving for her family. We have a very basic blueprint law office on a laptop, and that's kind of the business basics. So that's it's not meant to be, your whole business plan, but it really does have some basics of business in there. But I would love to connect on Instagram. I'm great on communicating via email, and I often have a 15-minute, let's get to know each other. One of my favorite parts of practicing law is the interaction with the clients and the referral sources and my fellow professionals. So since that's my favorite part, I created an opportunity to get to know people. So awesome. That's via my website. So, and awesome. You can find me at kellyesq.com.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely go check her out and reach out and see all the stuff that she's got going on. You do a lot of really, really good work there. So one final question for you before we wrap up here. Okay. If you had one final piece of advice for our audience, what would it be?
It would be that if you're frustrated or overwhelmed, take a step back, and because you're a smart person, I know that, you are seasoned in many different things. Take a step back and consider looking at your situation from a different angle. It's so insightful, because very often we get caught in the routine of it. So just step back and look at your problem from another angle to move you forward.
Yeah. And to kind of piggyback on that, we use the EOS model here internally at Spotlight Branding. For those who aren't familiar, it's essentially just kind of a framework for how businesses run meetings and set goals and all that kind of stuff. Okay. And quarterly, we as a leadership team get together, and the whole concept behind it is you show up to this meeting and you are not whatever your job title is. You are there as an advisor looking at the company. And so, we spend a whole day looking at issues, opportunities, everything as unbiased and with as much of an outside perspective as you can, right? And not taking your own, seats, personal circumstances into account as much as you can. And it really does help surface a lot of good talking points and
Oh my gosh, I bet.
drive a lot
So
of
smart.
discussion.
You just get different perspective that you would never get it without opening the door to have that conversation. That's really interesting. I'd like to, hear more about those. I bet they're fantastic.
Yes, absolutely. So, that's why I love that, what you said there is just, step back and try to, look at things either from a 10,000 foot view or just from a different angle. And, you really can start to see, just different avenues and opportunities. Or, if you struggle to do that, like you said, get with some mentors, get with some people who have been there, who are farther along down the line, because I know that they will have a lot of really good insight as well. Awesome.
Absolutely.
So that is going to do it for us this week. Thank you so much for continuing to listen. If you have not done so yet, please leave a rating and review. It does help the show out a lot. And that's going to do it. Kelly, thanks so much for joining us.
Okay. Take care. Enjoy your family. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. To learn more, go to spotlightbranding.com/centerstage.